Howdy peeps, are we doing well? So, I'm kind of catching up a little bit on a video prior to the last one, where I was referred to as Gandalf, or as I then corrected them, Sith. Now, truth be told, obviously I'm not exactly Sith. I don't have enough of the qualities, and the same goes for Jedi, so I'm kind of neither here nor there, I'm somewhere in the middle. But I did think that that was a very interesting thing to look into, especially if you want to have an understanding of the way things are at the moment, and if you want to relate it a little bit to Star Wars and the Sith Order versus the Jedi Order and everything else. So I did a bit of digging about on the old interwebs, like I do, and this is what I've come up with. Here are 25 rules all Sith must follow. And we're just going to focus on the first one. Love must be recognised as the weakness it is. Now you could say that's a bit dark. It's also quite truthful. You see, from our point of view. Now when I say our, I mean those that are actually of the same mindset of myself, and some of you guys will agree and some of you won't, and I respect your views either way, right? Doesn't faze me, man. It's like you're allowed to be you and I'm allowed to be me, and this is why we're here and why we're going to get on. No, we are. You see, obviously the things that I've talked about over the years has been more so obviously sort of as of 7 years ago was the more toxic side of intimate relationships, and me being a little bit wet behind the ears when it came down to women in this case with potential toxic traits or the potential for a actual personality disorder. And the more you sort of look around, the more you sort of really question. It's like, yeah, this problem's a lot bigger than what we're really realising, And of course, if you talk about these things as a guy, then you're bad and you hate women and blah blah blah. It's like no. Let's stop playing these childish games and actually have a fucking conversation about it. Because if you can't have a conversation about it, it just shows that you're not mature, right? You haven't gone past the phase of blaming everyone else except yourself, right, for your own issues or mistakes, bad decisions and choices, right? Regardless of whether you're male or female, right? That's the first thing we need to conclude. So, as I was saying, love is in fact a weakness when you see it from a toxic perspective, right? And that's not really where I see it from. You see, I see it more from the dangers it can pose to us guys. You've heard and read enough stories of false accusations, guys going through hell basically when they shouldn't have. Now sometimes guys at the same time kind of don't do themselves any favours either, but this is subjective to every individual, how they react in certain situations and circumstances, and like what was the intended outcome from the other person. And look, it's very easy to say that just because a particular relationship didn't work out in as you'd hoped, right? It is quite easy just to blame the other person and not take any responsibility for the part that you played. This is why I say, if you're into that dating game and all of that, don't pretend to be someone that you're not. Don't try and be someone else that isn't you. Because within doing that, as soon as the cracks start to appear within, the flaws within that persona that you're pretending to be, it causes a great deal of disillusion for the other person. And as a result of that, trust issues start being a thing as well, right? And look, it's understandable from both a woman's point and a guy's point. So let's go in with a reading. One of one of the first of many unwritten rules just about every Sith follows is to not love. Love is seen as a weakness by the Sith and can lead to a member of the Sith making decisions that no longer help promote the Sith Order, but rather the Sith himself. By preventing themselves from loving someone, they are freeing themselves from the strain that love can put on a person's heart and soul. And they're also freeing themselves from the potentials of manipulation, extortion, all these sort of things. Unfortunately, it is a thing, right? And there are, if you want to go for a lighter term and just refer to some of these women, because I'm seeing things from a guy's perspective or a man's perspective, one way is to refer them to as being gold diggers. If you're being a bit light about it, you're not trying to go too in depth without scratching the surface of the psychology of that individual. Well, let's carry on. However, seeing that the Sith thrive on making decisions with their emotions, like what could possibly go wrong with that? I'm taking the piss, obviously, right? One would think that love should be allowed by the Sith. It is already not allowed by the Jedi Order and is one of the few rules that both sides must follow in order to maintain credibility within their order. Well, yeah, because, like I said, it can be used against you. This is where people, you might maybe jump from one extreme to the other. You could argue that, well, men that go their own way, who choose to opt out of relationships and dating because they've been through what they've been through, they've seen what they've seen, they've witnessed things, they've witnessed a friend, a brother, a colleague, whatever, parents, get dragged through the emotional ringer. And if truth be told, sometimes guys do end up taking their own life as a result. Now, there might be many different reasons as to why, that is, like, obviously in extreme cases, but it's not rare. That's the thing. We may consider them extreme, but they're not rare either, and they don't get talked about a great deal. Now, just to sort of put this one out there, one of the things that I sort of recall from a relationship I was in, whereas I was sort of doing my thing and just, playing it cool, and the relationship was going fine and there wasn't any real issues, and of course the topic of love came about. And whereas you could argue that the persona that was presented to me seemed to be worthy of, air quotes, love. Well, what is love, actually? It's that's not a film quote, by the way. I'm just saying it's a question and I'm about to answer it. Well, it's the willingness and the ability to be loyal to someone, to be honest with someone, to be respectful of someone, to stand by their side when, not just in times of need, but all the time, and to support. Now, this is a very two-way street, very, very much a two-way street. And like I say, sometimes with this love and emotions, guys can get very carried away with themselves, and so can women. But I think, as far as from where the guys are concerned, it's that projected fantasy. Now, as I've said before, you combine a false persona and a projected fantasy, and you've got a recipe for disaster right there. Because the image that is presented before you is not true, and the image that you want it to be is also not true. Digressing back, this particular girl that I was dating, she wanted to know at which precise point I had, air quotes, fallen in love with her. Now, for me, that's always been a difficult one. Like, it's not like you wake up one day and it's like, well, for a guy, I think, or for me, right, I don't just wake up one day and think, oh, I really love this person. You've been dating them for X, Y, Z, and you just wake up one day and it's like, oh, I'm in love. It doesn't work like that, and not for me anyway. And then I sort of think back to what was said then from that particular chick, and it's like, at which point, I don't translate what was said as which point did I fall in love with her, or did I realise I'd fallen in love with her. You see, now I look at it and it's a bit sinister, and it kind of is what it is, but I think given the circumstances, I think this is quite accurate. I think what the question should have been posed as is closer to, at which point did I put on enough of a facade for you to fall in love with that facade? Not with the person putting on the facade itself. You might think, well, why would someone do that? Well, so that they can suss out what they need to do in order to play on the heartstrings of a man, to wrap them around their finger, to get whatever it is that they want out of them. You know, maybe it is attention, maybe it is financial and material resources. Half the time you don't really know. What we do know is that these are the things that tend to get lost in that transaction, as well as the time you've invested. So is love a weakness? I suppose it kind of is. If you don't know how to deal with a situation correctly, if you don't know how to read someone, and like I say, a lot of guys go into these relationships and they don't know how to read someone correctly. They're too, what's the word? Well, they're too busy caught up in that fantasy, of the girl being the be-all and end-all, and how she's so beautiful and how she's so great, and they would eat her farts. Sorry. It's true. And so in that sense, it is kind of a weakness, and it's a weakness that gets passed on to the man now through emotions. And like I say, once you've been through 2 or 3 of these relationships, as a guy, you do end up becoming a bit more hardened and a bit more tempered, and definitely a little bit colder sometimes. And again, depending on how breakups go and all of that, it will have an effect on how you see future relationships, and it does make you seriously question things like trust. Can you trust this next person? Which is, trust is one of them things. It's very difficult to earn. It's harder to maintain. But once it's gone, once the trust is gone, forget it. It's game over. And if you're trying to balance out a relationship where the trust is being doubted, then the relationship is doomed. And look, sometimes it's not even necessarily in some circumstances, it's not even the girl's or the woman's fault. It's just because of past experiences. But it also comes down to this. Something that we see a lot of in terms of I suppose women usually on YouTube shouting out about how they can't find any decent men that aren't emotionally available or emotionally mature. Now, I think in a lot of cases that it'd be close to the truth to look at it from the perspective of, well, if they're incapable of finding a man that is supposedly emotionally mature, it would make me question as to why that is. What is that girl doing that is making these guys not making themselves emotionally available? And again, emotional availability, it's very subjective to its meanings and all of that. Guys, generally speaking, aren't expected to be open with their emotions, right? I mean, point out a girl that actually appreciates a man that's a blubbering mess and cries all the fucking time. I didn't think so. No. No, not unless they were doing it in that relationship for monetary gain or something like that. I mean, I can't. Or, I mean, look, maybe some women do or might like that, but I think that is going to be very, very limited. But no, we don't do that. And why would we? It's not really our thing, which is kind of why sometimes I have a bit of an objection to this whole thing about teaching the sort of younger generations to be more open with their emotions. And it's like, oh my god, this is going to cause a catastrophe. This is going to cause some big problems for some individuals, at least later on in life, you know. But it's one of them. Maybe it is all part of the destruction of the nuclear family and putting women, I suppose, as a priority, putting women on the pedestal. And then, well, it's not the first time this has been said, but guys get seen as second-class citizens as a result. And it is a difficult set of circumstances, but ultimately, if you're not careful, yes, love can absolutely be a weakness to you. Yeah, it can be, definitely. And that's just the way that it is, because some women will manipulate. You know, you got to remember, I'm not saying this to be horrible or anything like that, but part of a woman's nature is that of manipulating a situation, you know, to get what they want, if they can't scream and shout. I'm not saying it's solely women, obviously guys do it as well. You've heard of con artists. It's the same sort of thing. It's still manipulation, but in terms of relationships, I think women are probably a lot more likely to go down that path, in some cases at least. And it's not going to end well. So ultimately, yeah, I think maybe love is kind of a weakness if you don't know how to control it. So, and you know, I say control it, I mean actually be able to pull yourself out of the situation and take an objective view as to the different scenarios and circumstances you find yourself in. You know, maybe you're going your own way and this video is totally useless to you, you know, in terms of, but, you know, maybe you're also going your own way and you hadn't sort of seen it like this, or maybe you have and you still think it's best to go your own way. And look, I'm not judging no matter what, right? It's like, do you, whatever works for you. I respect you no matter what. I still want to help you guys out, and I still want what is best for you, you know, in this world that is clown world and everything's upside down. And I suppose you know, it's just so much harder these days, you know. And like I say, you know, the idea of finding a unicorn, it's like, yeah. Anywho, right, I'm going to wrap this one up. Thoughts, comments and opinions, feel free to jump down. Till the next one, stay cool, stay free, peace out.